The amnesiac sorcerer, a man, wakes up in the middle of an enchanted forest. The tall trees around him were glowing with an otherworldly light, and strange symbols were carved into their bark. Startled, the man recoiled slightly, but the butterfly remained unfazed. The trees whispered secrets to one another, and the bushes rustled despite the absence of any wind. The man instinctively raised his staff, a surge of power coursing through him, and the forest fell silent. The visions faded, and the pain in his head subsided. The tree spirit watched him, its branches swaying slowly. "Your powers are returning," it rasped. "But why? Why have you come here, Sorcerer King?" The man hesitated, torn between the overwhelming urge to understand his past and the nagging fear of what he might find. Panting heavily, he stared into the mirror, the truth of his past self-sacrifice dawning on him. He wasn't the villain, he was the hero, but in his amnesia, he'd become the very thing he'd once sworn to destroy. Now the choice was his to make. Would he return to his old power, embrace the darkness within him, and claim his birthright as the Sorcerer King? Or would he start fresh, forge a new path for himself, and become the hero his past self had been? The fate of the world hung in the balance as the amnesiac sorcerer grappled with his newfound memories and the terrible responsibility that came with them. But as he gazed into the depths of the ancient tree's hollow eyes, he knew he couldn't escape his destiny. When he lowered his staff, the whispering started up again, louder than before. He sought out the glowing trees, eager to unlock the secrets of his forgotten past. At times, his magic surged within him, uncontrollable and untamed, forcing him to flee from villages and towns that couldn't comprehend his awesome power. With a mighty roar, his past self unleashed his magic, banishing the darkness back into the mirror. But as he did so, a single drop of blood fell from his forehead onto the ornate surface, shattering the vision and sending shards of darkness spiraling into the real world. The wanderer staggered back, horrified, as tendrils of shadow reached out from the mirror, seeking to consume him. Other times, it lay dormant, leaving him feeling weak and vulnerable. But through it all, he pressed on, guided by an insatiable curiosity and a desperate hope to reclaim his lost memories. With a sigh, he turned and walked in the opposite direction, deeper into the glowing woods. In the center stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface rippling like water. Drawn to it, he approached cautiously, half expecting to see his own reflection. But what he found instead shocked him to his core. The mirror showed a vision of a grand hall, a throne room filled with dark magic where a council of shadowy figures plotted and schemed. And sitting atop the throne was the man, no, the king from his stolen memories. But upon his head sat not a crown of twisted branches, but a circlet of pure white gold. He wasn't a dark sorcerer, he was once a legendary hero. It cocked its head to the side as if regarding him curiously and then fluttered away into the trees. As he followed it, more of these strange symbols caught his eye, each one seeming to pulse with a faint magical energy. They looked ancient, like they'd been here for centuries, yet at the same time they seemed strangely new, as if they'd been carved only moments before. He was wearing a robe adorned with arcane sigils, and clutched in his hand was a staff that hummed with latent power. But despite the obvious signs of magic all around him, the man remembered absolutely nothing. Who was he? How did he get here? And what were those glowing symbols? As he stood up, brushing the leaves and twigs off his robe, a small blue butterfly landed on his outstretched finger. Suddenly, the forest around him began to shift and change. Not long after, he heard a voice. Well, who do we have here? A wizened old tree spirit emerged from the trunk of a nearby oak, its branches gnarled and twisted like the limbs of an ancient crone. "Who are you?" The man asked, his voice echoing with a strange power. "Who am I?" The tree spirit cackled, its leaves rustling like dry bones. "You forget so easily, Sorcerer King, even your own name. How convenient." The man recoiled at the mention of such a title, a sudden vision flashing before his eyes. He saw himself atop a mountain of skulls, a crown of twisted branches upon his head, and dark magic swirling around him like a vortex. Then, just as quickly, the vision vanished. Shaken by the intensity of it, the man stumbled back, accidentally striking a rock with his staff. The rock burst into flames, and he cried out in surprise. More visions came, memories not his own, of a world of magic and mayhem, of fire and fury, of power beyond his wildest dreams. With each vision, his grasp of magic grew stronger. And then, as suddenly as it started, it was over. Days turned into weeks as the man, now calling himself the Wanderer, journeyed across the mystical land. Finally, his search led him to a clearing bathed in the soft glow of the ever-present magical light. As the Wanderer watched, his past self confronted a terrible evil, a creature of pure darkness that threatened to consume the world. With a cry of anguish, he raised his staff and unleashed a torrent of fire, driving the shadows back.